So we'll begin. We will stand and recite the pledge together, and then I will introduce our first item and move forward from there.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So our first item is actually some board business. We need to replace our chair and vice chair. I'm acting in this role today. And so I guess I'll invite who's here to make any nominations as we might like for chair, and then we'll do vice chair second.
I'm happy to elect you, Andrew, for the chair position.
I don't feel ganged up on it all, guys.
I'll second the nomination.
Okay, then we'll have a vote. Sorry, I forgot your name. You're Jennifer. Jennifer's new. This is her first meeting. Jennifer, your vote?
My vote is in the affirmative.
Aye.
And why not? Aye. And so we need so that passes. I am, I guess, the new chair and will continue in the role. We need a vice chair.
Do I get to nominate again?
You were first to the button.
Okay, well, I will nominate Maria as our vice chair.
Happily seconded. Jennifer, sort of vote.
I vote in the affirmative.
And I do as well.
Aye.
Okay. And with that, we have our chair and vice chair, and we'll continue forward. Thank you to our applicants for patience as we kind of go through some of these formalities. So I will read in our first item for the evening. Our first item reads as follows. Nathan Oldroyd requests approval of a variance to the side yard setback standard of section 14.10.080 from 10 feet to 6 feet and 10 inches in order to move forward with a 2-lot subdivision in the R1.6 one-family residential zone located at 990 East, 300 South, Provo neighborhood. All right. Well, why don't we begin then with, I'll invite staff to make their report, and then we'll move forward from there.
All right, thank you very much. The applicant's property we show here, 990 East, 300 South. It's in the R16 zone, as was stated, and the variance request that they're asking for would be for the side yard setback in this zone. So you can see here kind of an overlay of how they want to subdivide this property. You can see adjacent to the existing house, there would be a request for the variance on that side of the house on the west side to have that reduced from 10 feet to 6 feet 10 inches so that the existing house doesn't have to be modified to comply with the zone requirement. Staff has reviewed this request and finds that there's some issues as far as being able to create a second lot, that this variance wouldn't necessarily, if granted, the variance wouldn't allow for them to move forward with this proposed subdivision, in that the lot with the home on it wouldn't meet the width requirements for the R16 zone. And so staff has reviewed this and provided a recommendation to deny the requested variance for this property. creating a subdivision lot that doesn't meet the definition or doesn't meet the requirements in the code, we would see that as a self-imposed hardship, and the ordinance for a variance to be granted specifically prohibits recognizing a self-imposed hardship or an economic hardship. And so with that, staff's recommendation would be to not approve the proposed variance request. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have those.
Yeah, I'll open it up to our board members to ask any questions of staff they would like.
I do have a question. So it's not the size of the proposed second structure that is causing any difficulties. It is the primary structure that, and the distance to, is it the driveway there or property line? What is that's causing the issue? So it wouldn't matter how big or small a secondary structure is. It's the primary structure that's causing this issue. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we'll zoom in a little bit here so you can see it a little more clearly. The existing lot complies with the code right now. And what they're looking to do is to subdivide it and add an additional lot. This would be lot 1, which we call a flag lot. A flag lot has the long entrance down to the main body of the lot here. And so this 20-foot required width for a flag lot would reduce the overall width of the current lot to make it not comply with the 60-foot requirement in the existing zone. So if they were to get a variance granted to reduce this setback from the existing house to the new property line, which would be here, they wouldn't be able to make the existing house or lot 2 comply with the setback of 60 feet because they're having to take off 20 feet to create a flag lot. So they're creating this hardship on this property by doing that, and it wouldn't be able to comply with the code requirement for lot width, even if the variance was granted to reduce the side yard setback.
And just to be clear, the requested variance is only to the side lot, not to the overall width requirement.
Correct. Yeah, the request that we're reviewing tonight is they made a request to reduce the 10-foot side yard setback from 10 feet to 6 feet 10 inches. And staff notified them upon reviewing their application that if that were granted, the project or the proposed plat wouldn't be able to be approved because it doesn't meet the minimum lot standards for the R16 zone.
Does anyone from the board have any more questions?
I have a question. On the original lot, because it makes it out of compliance, with the question at hand, is structural issues ever addressed, such as what happens to the primary residence parking if the variance is granted, the flag lot is created, and now the primary home has no parking? And how does that tie into other zoning problems that would create? Or is that out of scope for this consideration?
I guess I don't have an answer as far as what their current parking situation is there. And that would be something that we would review as part of the subdivision application that they would submit. So I think that's a little bit out of the purview that we're looking at today. But that is a potential issue that also could make that hard to be approved. They would have to find say it was wide enough or whatever, they would have to provide a way to maintain the minimum parking requirements as well for the zone.
Does Provo ever consider easements and shared The primary lot, would the issue be solved with an easement and a shared driveway?
No, they would need so the code requires that they provide a driveway that leads to the required covered parking for that property. So each parcel would
Easement
have,
would be, a shared easement would not
no,
solve
it-
it. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from the board? Okay, well, with that, we will invite the applicant or their representative to come and address the board. I invite you to state your name and address for the record, and we'd love to hear from you.
You gotta click it for me. Okay, well, thanks for being willing to meet and listen to us. And just a couple of things. I'd like the board members to remember how you've been voting so far today and the affirmative on all your stuff. So I want to address the 2 or 3 items that the city is saying that we don't meet. First of all, on the assumption that it's a self-imposed hardship. So I want to talk about that, and I give you a little handout of how this came to be. So my wife and I are real estate agents. Our son Nathan's the one that purchased the property. You look at the listing that I handed you. The property was listed with the notes down there that say possible flag lot, lots 0.47. So the owner had called the city. The listing agent had called the city. We called the city, and my son Nathan called the city about this possible flag lot. And we're told on the phone in the affirmative, this would meet the requirements for a flag lot. So Nate makes an official offer May 27th, multiple offer situations because of this flag lot. That makes the value quite worth a lot more money. Make an offer on the 27th. They accept Nate's offer on the 28th. So we go under contract. We have until June 7th for our due diligence. Okay. So between May 28th and June 7th, Nate emails the city, and the email, which you have, and I didn't want to point fingers. I wasn't going to hand this out to anybody, but I'm going to need to show it to you for the reason. So the email that comes from the city says, following up on our phone conversation, the above address would work for a flag lot. This is before we buy this property. We get the affirmative from the city. Please review the standards once you prepare for the subdivision and you're ready to go. So my argument is this is not a self-imposed hardship. We called the city. We did our due diligence. We closed on this knowing from the city this would work as a flag lot. Okay. So I disagree with this self-imposed flag lot. Okay. So what we're asking for, again, if on that one side it's 3 feet short. Okay. And maybe that doesn't matter, but what the email from the city, it sounds like there's something that's a little bit deeper that needs to be resolved in this. Back and forth between the city and Nate, when the city and the city also tonight said that they informed the applicant that it wouldn't work for subdivision. That was in December 1st. We bought this in June. Okay. So in the emails from August 30th to September 2nd, it took Nate almost 4 months to find an engineer to come and even draw that, because no one would come out and just do a flag lot. All the engineers are busy doing big subdivisions. So it took him 4 months to get an engineer to come out. December 1st, Nate turns in his plat map, this map here to the city, to this Provo City, and the city replies and says, there's a problem that I see. There isn't a 10-foot. There's not 10 feet between the house and the proposed property line, that edge of the concrete. So Nate replies and says, you mean the house or the driveway? Is there any wiggle room? And they're saying, in this case, the only option would be for for you to try to get a side yard variance, or you could try for an ordinance test amendment to alter the flag lot regulations. And the city comments, I think since we repeatedly run into issues with this, the text amendment would make more sense. Drafting language that allows for the flag portion to be included in the front lot side yard. So if the text amendment from Provo City would have let that 20-foot flag lot be included, then it's not a violation anymore. And it sounds like a lot of people are calling on this saying, and the city's the one that sent that, we need to amend our own city text amendment. So I don't mind going down that road, but we didn't have the time. I'm not an attorney to draft it. If you need volunteer hours to hand out flyers, I'm more than happy to do that. But again, from our point of view, we don't feel like this is a self-imposed hardship. And it's a perfect lot for the house. If you look back at the map, if you can show them the map of the neighborhood, they're all small lots. I mean, this would be the perfect one for a house in the back. So again, I'm requesting that the board approve, even if we don't meet it for the flag lot, we'll cross that bridge with the city and maybe help them amend this other part. So I'm not worried about the front 60 feet, but the variance on the side, that concrete driveway is already there. It's been there for a long, long time. We would like approval for the variance, and then we'll deal with the flag lot when we get to it. So that's my argument on why we're requesting a variance for this flag lot.
Anyone from the board like to ask any questions of the applicant or?
Yes, I would. You bought this as a single family home?
Single family home with a flag lot is how we bought it. Yes.
Okay. This MLS report that you passed us said that it has a legal basement apartment.
It does.
So you need, by code, you need to have 4 off-street parking.
Oh, that's a good
spaces.
question. So Nate was going to put, I'm not going to be able to hold my hand straight here, parking right here behind the house. Right there behind the house. So he's going to put 2. He has 1 already right here, but he's going to put 2 more right here behind the house for the existing house. So he'll have off-street parking.
Where would the 4th one go?
So the 4th, meaning you have to have 4 for 1 house.
Yes, 2 for the upstairs
So he
and 2
could
for
put
the
3.
down.
There's plenty of room here behind this house, right here.
So I have a question about that. What is the access to the behind the house parking?
So it would be coming down that flag lot and parking there behind the house.
So that gets into an easement where you have to have the flag lot owner provide an easement. Is that something that works with code?
From what I understand, I don't believe that it would. But I think as far as parking and all of that goes, that might be outside of the scope that we're looking at today. Those issues would need to be addressed as part of a subdivision application through the city.
Yeah, grass in the front. We can do it in the front, but it's all grass. So we hadn't addressed this. Again, we didn't know that it wouldn't meet this subdivision until December 1st at all. Hadn't even heard that. So again, today's proposal, what we had requested was strictly for the variance on the side yard.
Any other questions? And I think I appreciate the comments that have been made so far, clarifying the scope of what we can and can't speak to today, recognizing that even if we move forward and approve this variance request, that your journey isn't over.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? I don't have any.
I just had one. You said that your son is the owner.
Yes,
Who is Brett Hutchings?
he was the seller. He was the owner at the time
Oh,
that was
before.
printed.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Okay.
I have one other question that I think is in scope. With the change to the lot size, what is the average lot size? Does it meet the minimum size lot requirements, the original lot that Provo has? Obviously, it would be grandfathered in. I assume it's a smaller lot now if this is approved.
So it's R16, so I think 6,000 square feet is the minimum,
Okay.
and that
thank
would
you.
leave that one at 6,470,
Perfect.
if that's correct.
All right. Well, seeing no more questions, we'll thank you for your application, and we will open the floor for any public comment, either here in the room or if we have anyone through some of our online or otherwise phone means. So if you would just approach the mic, state your name, address, and brief but thorough.
My name is Dwayne Gordon. My address is 959 East, 360 South. That's actually my trampoline that's right there. So I have lived on that property for 33 years. I have looked at that lot that the Oldroyds have purchased, along with some of the others down through the middle of the block in years past, with the idea of making a flag lot and doing an infill subdivision. With all due respect to the Oldroyds, there are a lot of issues that, besides this side yard clearance, that need to be addressed. The lot width is the one that they are addressing now. The fact that that is a quote unquote legal apartment in the basement also is a question mark. And the parking that they would need to provide for the established 2 legal residences there. So I understand their concerns, but there are a lot more issues besides that side lot clearance that need to be addressed. In my mind, all of those issues would need to be resolved before the side yard variance was granted, because it's kind of getting the cart before the horse to grant this side yard variance for access to a lot that can't be a lot. So I understand. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out a way to make this type of a situation work, and was unable to with that access from that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure. Is there anyone else? I was also making sure anybody on the phones or anything like that we.
No, we do only, right now, we're only doing 50%.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for the clarification. I'm happy to,
We welcome the comments, but I don't think anyone would go to the trouble of subdividing and the cost of trying to subdivide without knowing you could get the variance first. So to me, that is the horse, not the other way around. If we can't get a variance, why would you ever go down the road of trying to subdivide and spending the money to do that? So to me, this is the first step. If we get the variance granted, again, we have a lot of hurdles to go down the road, but to grant the variance tonight isn't guaranteeing the subdivision, isn't guaranteeing the parking, isn't guaranteeing the basement apartment. We can address those down the road.
Okay. Thank you. So seeing no other indication of public comment, I think we will move into our deliberation among the board members. I might actually, as part of our deliberations, ask a question to staff staff, just hoping someone can address this idea of information that was given by the city about the possibility of a flag lot, and then that not kind of ending up being the case. From the city's side, is there a story or something further understanding we should have?
Yeah, I haven't seen the email that you're looking at, but I think a lot of times, what happens is, people will, come into the front counter and say, hey, we're looking at this property, we're looking to do this. We don't have a formal application in front of us. We don't have dimensions and things of that nature to really be able to know if it will work or not. So typically, in those situations, it would, you could look at and say potentially something could work, but obviously it's not a formal approval or anything like that, because we don't have an actual application in front of us that we've reviewed and have those dimensions and everything. So it's I think difficult to be able to approve something like that or whatever at without having all that information, that application submitted.
It does seem like it, the home buying process and the speed at which that moves, and the speed at which the city is able to move, don't necessarily align well. And this is one of several cases that we've heard in the last little while where someone bought a home believing that it was capable of doing something that later turned out that it was not.
I have a question for staff. Were you aware in making this report that that this is a legal duplex? Legal duplex.
It's an accessory. Accessory dwelling unit.
Okay. All right. Was staff aware?
No, I mean, we're reviewing a variance request, and so I just looked at the variance criteria and the requests proposed, not a thorough review of the property for things like that.
I'm curious how my other board members are understanding this idea of unreasonable hardship, because I'm sympathetic to staff's initial finding that, well, there's no reason that someone must be or ought to be allowed to subdivide their lot when the parameters of the code the facts don't meet the parameters of the code. However, there is a way of understanding unreasonable hardship to potentially include an applicant doing due diligence, however we might conceive that, and acting upon it and later finding a hardship.
Well, I can appreciate when anybody is thinking about purchasing a property, calling into community development and checking on what the current zoning is for that property, checking on what can be done with that property. If it's a single family home, but it has a basement, can that basement be used as an accessory apartment? If it's already being rented out, is it, excuse me, is it a legal accessory apartment? I've known people who have done due diligence, excuse me, and have been surprised. I know people who haven't who have done it and have gotten the news that they were looking for. And I know people who haven't done it and have bought properties and found out that information they were given either by the previous owner or even by real estate agents, not saying you guys ever have, but real estate agents weren't exactly the truth, and so they bought something not getting all of the facts. So, there is a lot to be said for calling. Having said that, however, until staff actually goes out and does an analysis of a property, it's hard for them to say, and I've experienced this firsthand, it's hard for them to say definitively, yes, this can be done. No, this cannot be done. They actually have to go out and take measurements and look up things. And that makes it very, very difficult when one is looking to purchase a property and they call for that reassurance, and they're given what they think is a definitive answer, but it's more of, well, it's a possibility. And that can be really, really frustrating on both parties, on the buyer and the staff. And so I really feel for both parties. Does that create a hardship on the part of the owner? I would have to say that it, for me, for where I sit, that it doesn't, unless you have that paper from staff saying that absolutely this definitely can be created into a flag lot. Unless you have that analysis that's been done, then only then you can say that this is created. You bought this property with this analysis done, and now it's created a hardship for you. That's where I stand right now.
Jennifer, any thoughts you'd like to add? I have some, but please go ahead.
Well, certainly, as a homeowner in Provo and as a parent, I feel for you. I am sorry that all your due diligence and efforts aren't taking everyone to a place where your son is going to get exactly what he wants. I also can appreciate that that on the MLS listing, the potential for an approved translates into possibly, maybe, sort of. And I understand he asked the right questions, but a potential certainly is not something that is guaranteed. In establishing an undue hardship, I think I agree with Maria on this. I think that certainly this is just the first step, and I do agree it is the first step, and I can appreciate what the neighbor is saying as well. And so without staff going through an official review and taking measurements and having what has been certainly an arduous journey to get an engineer to even plat out the property, I agree that this is not official authorization was not given. And so it's a little challenging for me as well to see or to justify the need for an easement or for, a variance.
I think my concern continues to be that what kind of asking myself, and whether this is a fair standard, I'm happy to hear argument, but what is kind of a reasonable requirement for a resident to meet? Kind of what reasonable due diligence equates to, and when someone sends in a request and gets back very explicit language, the above address would work for a flag lot development. I hear a commitment that perhaps ought not to have been made. I mean, I think Maria, you spoke very well to the idea that there should have been some provisional language here, but it's not. And when it says, if I'm average citizen, which we are, and I see planning supervisor development services, I can imagine, I'm going to take that to the bank and say, okay, well, no one has made me aware of a broader process. This language is not conditional, so it doesn't feel like there's no reason for me to believe that it's a gamble. There's no indication that I ought to be getting, legal interpretation. I guess I'm just saying I do see space. For considering, hardship here. And just for our own purposes, can someone from staff because there's only 3 of us, we do need to we need to reach unanimity in order to overturn, or unanimity regardless?
Correct. Your decision with 3 of you would have to be 3 votes
in order to complete this item, regardless of the direction we go.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I do have another question. I find the written email, it was an email. I do find it very problematic. Certainly, it's not our job to tell staff how to run their communications. Is there a standard set at support in supporting the written word? What historically has taken place when there is a conflict between this kind of writing from staff and the code?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know that I have an answer. I don't know if I can get help from Bill on that question. Thanks.
So the variance criteria you're familiar with, and they're in front of you. The variance criteria talk about a hardship being related to property, to the parcel. So does a letter from a staff member qualify as a hardship? I think that would be hard to prove when the hardship has to be related to the property itself. If staff made some statement on which investment was based, then that's a claim that the property owner should make to the attorney's office, unless somehow you feel the variance criteria in front of you are somehow met. Does that answer your question?
I appreciate that clarification very much. Hearing that, that clarifies, I think, for me that while I may have some fairly adamant feelings about what this means, and that whether or not there are reasonable damages and that sort of thing, that's well beyond our purview. But limiting hardship to the property as it exists, that's a harder argument.
I have one other comment kind of following up on what you were saying. As I read this email, there were 2 things that kind of stood out for me. And I say these hopefully without anybody feeling any blame. First is a statement following up on our phone conversation. I don't know how many times, I've been in a conversation with somebody, be it over the phone or in person, where I'm conveying information and the information isn't all there. I think I'm doing a great job, but later I find out not so much. And so, I just wanted to throw that out there. The second thing that stood out for me was where Mr. Ardmore stated, please review the standards, and he gives a section number. That puts the onus always on a property owner to read the Provo City Codes and be familiar with what we're asked to do as Provo City homeowners and property owners. And, if anybody's seen the Provo City Code book, it's like yay thick. And so there's virtually no way for a Provo City officer to tell us everything that we need to know in a phone conversation. And I would say there's no way for us to tell them everything they need to know in a phone conversation. So while perhaps using the word would wasn't the best choice, I don't think that this single email creates a hardship for the property owner. I think that there are always issues with language, and that always the onus is on us as a property owner in the city of Provo to research the standards for ourselves. We do reach out to community development, but I think that we also are responsible for understanding those standards, and we're referred to those standards.
All right. Do we have a motion from the board? Is that at my discretion, or is there a firm?
Yeah, we've had public comment and that was closed. If you want to open it back up, you could, but you don't have to.
No. I think we are going to move on, but I appreciate you. Thank you.
I'll make a motion.
Please.
I move that the board, oh my goodness, I just had that the board deny item number 2, where Nathan Oldroyd requests approval of a variance to the side yard setback standard of section 14.10.080 from 10 feet down to 6 feet 10 inches in order to move forward with a 2-lot subdivision in the R16 family residential zone located at 990 East, 300 South in the Provo neighborhood. And that staff recommendations are included in this motion.
A second?
I would second that.
Well, why don't we begin with Jennifer, since you're new, you can second and begin our vote.
Okay, I would move that we begin the vote.
Well, I mean, you can make your vote. Yeah.
Aye, yes, aye.
Aye.
And I will go ahead and make that unanimous and say I think the hardships as they exist are beyond the purview of our scope. So with that, item 2 is complete, and we will move on to the next agenda item for the evening. All right. Jason Andersen requests approval of a variance to the rear yard setback regulation of section 14.10.080 Provo City Code from 20 feet to 12 feet in order to add living space to his home in the R101 family residential zone located at 1330 North, 1160 West, Grandview South neighborhood. Invite our staff member to present the report.
Okay, thank you. So just to get familiar with the property, as you reviewed in your staff report, it's up here in Grandview neighborhood. They're circled in red there. You could see the distance currently existing between the home and the property lines. So they're requesting a 8-foot rear yard variance to be able to bring, here's a little closer, to be able to bring an addition, a proposed addition, as close as 12 feet to the rear yard. As staff evaluated this, you could see in the staff report that there were some good points on understanding a reasonable variance could be granted here, but in the end, can justify all 5 criteria. So we'd had to recommend denial on this one because all 5 criteria couldn't be met according to staff. I do have additional slides here if you'd like, of the drawing and photos of the property, if you'd like me to go to any of those at any point. But that's all I have to summarize my report, unless you have any questions.
Well, thank you. So any of the board members have questions for staff?
My understanding is that this will be a remodel and that there will be sections added, and some of the primary, we're just looking at the code on this, but there are some mitigating reasons for why that needs to take place as reported by our homeowners. So with some graphics, thank you. Are there any other properties along this street that have any kind of variance for their backyard?
Staff reviewed that, and while, if I go to the zoomed out picture, while there are properties that have similar lots, there could be some grandfathered, some legal nonconformities there, but I couldn't find any variances on record on that.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for staff before we invite the applicants to speak? Okay. So we will move into the portion where we'll invite the applicant and or their representative to speak. If you would state your name and address for the record.
Here. Thanks for letting us come. Jennifer, it's my first time too. So I've never done this. You guys are all very formal, and I love how you're hiding your emotions so well. It's an emotional taxing service position. So thank you for doing this. Speaking of emotions too, it's our anniversary, 21st anniversary. So if you don't help us out with this,
This is the only thing I asked for.
yeah, you may have to invite us back to discuss my future hardships if things don't go well. And thank you, Aaron, too, for your time and helping us out as well. A few things that I think were contrary, and the reason why it maybe was denied initially, was that the literal enforcement would not cause unreasonable hardship for the applicant. And you can see some embarrassing pictures there that my wife was able to enhance. But this is a severe case of an allergic reaction that I have to mold that is growing on this east wall. So what's going to have to happen, and the doctors say there's nothing they can do about it. I mean, the steroids and whatnot can calm the effects, but this is all over my body and we can't move. So the hardship would be, that we wouldn't be able to afford moving to another house. So it's really a forced, I guess, extension where we don't want to do it. At least I don't personally. There's a lot of hardship that would come from opening up this entire wall to clean all the mold that's on this wall. I've already done one wall and it was not fun. It took me about 6 months just to bear through it. So the only way that we can think financially, and I know finances isn't always the hardship here, but it would be hard for us to come up with the money to just do these types of repairs without looking at it as more of an investment, putting it back into the house. Sorry, I don't know why I'm emotional. I told you this is an emotional job, right? I don't know how you guys do it. So that's just one of the things that we're looking at. The other one is this whole side of the house is not energy efficient. I mean, our water bill is double what it should be. Our heating and air, we'd have to replace an AC unit. The windows were all poorly installed. There's gaps, causing even more allergic reaction because you can tell, that back lot is weeds and, just unmanicured landscape for me to breathe in, and it's awesome. So there's a lot of things that we would have to do to reinforce this wall, not just add an extension. The windows would all have to be new. The heating and air would have to be improved. And we've received letters from the city saying that we're a non-efficient home. And we know already because we're paying double in heating, air, and water. So those are some of the reasons why, we wanted to come before you today and tell you why we're wanting to do this type of a project. What else do we need to talk about?
The second one.
Okay, the second one. Sorry, I get off track here. So the second one is the peculiar property size. The lot size is smaller than the minimum 10,000 feet, which is in accordance with the R1.10 zoning. The back property line, it's actually angled. So at the more narrow spot, there's about a 3 feet difference, right, between the widest and the narrowest point of the property line. And ours is one of the ones that's angled, which Aaron brought up in the report. And so the true property line, it's not really conclusive since there's actually two fences with about a 2.2 foot space between the two. So it's really undetermined where the property line even is on the back of our house. There's a wood fence and there's a metal fence, and then there's the 2 feet in between the two. How am I doing? You're doing great.
And then on number 3, it talked about special circumstances. Oh, sorry, I can't read. The variance is essential to the enjoyment of kind of what our neighbors experience. I went onto the Provo City maps, and you have a paper in front of you. All of the homes that are in red are within 1 mile of our house. And so every house in red is under the 20 feet, which is what we're asking to be. Some of them are even less than what we're asking for. I mean, we have the one across the street, actually a corner, they may not have had a variance, they may have been grandfathered in, like Aaron had said, but they're only 9.8. And by the way, I did include a list of addresses, but I was super nervous doing that because I hope I don't get any of my neighbors in trouble.
They don't
I
know,
hope
right?
this is not like me, like ratting them out. Because I think all their homes are from the 60s. It's not, there's some,
A lot of them were grandfathered.
there's one on 2099 West 1460 North that actually was done recently, and it only has a 6.7 foot backyard. And so I don't know if they got approval for that because it was, we moved here in 2014 and that house was under construction after we moved here. So they got a 6.7 foot backyard since 2014. I don't know how, like I said, I hope I'm not getting anyone in trouble, but everything in red.
This isn't by law enforcement.
Okay. I just don't want, we love our neighborhood.
We do.
We want to stay. We love our neighbors. We love the community. I do a lot of coaching with the youth programs. We don't want to move. Sorry, I don't know why I'm hearing me cry. But yeah, so I went through the Provo City maps. And so I think there's 41 homes, and I did stop because Jason told me I was being excessive. But I think I showed that denying us would exclude us from enjoying the same property rights that our neighbors do. Sorry. Him allowing us to show his mold allergy is actually, he gets very embarrassed by it. The reason why he doesn't look like that now is he's heavily medicated on steroids. And so that was a big thing for him to be able to share that, because usually he doesn't leave the house.
I work from home too, so that doesn't help.
But yeah, so that was my number 3, was I pulled up 41 homes that had similar circumstances to us. And then number 4, number 5, we didn't go too much in depth because I felt like Aaron had kind of said that I didn't feel like we needed to address those as much as hardships 1, 2, and 3. But yeah, I don't know what I'm missing.
Yeah,
'Cause
no, I
you
think
made
that's
me
good.
cry.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Here, are y'all allergic to chocolate?
I'm good, thanks though. Trying to quit.
Thank you very much for your willingness to engage this process, especially on your anniversary of all things. In my real life daytime job, I'm a couples therapist, and you guys have many more good years to come. But back to the topic at hand. Let's open up to public comment. Seeing no one else in the room, and since we're not doing anything virtual, I'm going to say we're in pretty good shape. Okay, well, we'll close that portion of the meeting and move on to our deliberations.
I have a question for staff. You've done some exceptional non-stalking research. So, and thank you. Rashes are hard. They're just the public face of that. I'm just sorry, but thank you for being willing to share your experience with us. So for staff, my question would be, there appear to be a plethora of exceptions or grandfathered variances. Do you have any background on that or history and additionally, could you address that new build? That seems like a pretty substantial variance.
Yeah, let me say 2 things to that. The first is that Mrs. Andersen went way wider than I did in her review. So when I was just kind of doing a circle around, pretty much between Jordan Avenue, 1220 West, 1460 North, down to the end of where 1160 T's end there. Those 4 that were found, I assume are grandfathered in because I couldn't find variances in that small bubble. That larger bubble that going west through the Grandview neighborhood, including that one with the new home with 6.7 feet, there may have well been variances, but I don't have that information right now.
I think for me, and if there is any other guidance, Bill, jump in if I need to know something other than what's in my head. As much of a hardship as it is to have mold in your house, which is horrific, it has to be fixed, whether you fix it with your current exterior walls or you renovate to what the plan is, it has to be fixed, obviously. And this is an opportunity for you to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, basically. So in considering a variance, you don't have any neighbors here. You have other neighbors who have obtained it. What are your feelings? And this is, I don't have a decision here to portend, but is there a halfway? If you were in compliance, where would that new wall be? Or is there any space to blow out that wall?
Are you talking kind of beyond the idea that it would be, we have here a finding of 12 feet from the rear property line?
Yes. So if where you are right now, you're in compliance, where you want to be, you're not in compliance, where is the code? What is the maximum without seeking a variance?
The minimum rear yard is 20 feet, which is essentially where that back wall is at right now. Yeah.
Thank you. That was my question.
Okay.
Thank you. That was the answer. I appreciate it.
I'll be forthright in that my general approach is to give homeowners what they ask for unless I can't. Someone, the code or someone else, speaking, shows me that there's no kind of way within my purview to allow that. I guess just to raise an issue for discussion, I do want to address this this map at 41 within a mile, 41 properties, I think that's what it was, within a 1 mile radius. It is difficult for me to say that this is not a trend or pattern for the area that would, and another would not necessarily be, I don't know. Literal enforcement here seems to be, I don't know if I want to go so far as arbitrary, but at least I think there's room for conversation.
No, I would agree with you. I think the new build with zero backyard, well, what I would consider zero backyard, for me, that grandfathering these properties whenever they were built, grandfathering them in might have been a decision from the 60s or 70s, but a new build, that was a decision last year, or I'm sorry, 2016. So I agree with that.
I mean, and so there is a de facto kind of use of property here that's happening that's fairly general, that other neighbors are enjoying, and they have a disproportionately small lot, but I don't have any kind of comparators for how big these other lots are, but perhaps literal enforcement here is, becomes a hardship. Maria, any thoughts, not to put you on the spot?
No, you're fine. No, I was just finding their house on this map and looking at the other properties around it. And noticing that there is definitely a mix of.
Aaron, do you have that you could put up?
I don't have her map. The farthest that I have is this.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you.
That's okay. No, but just noticing that there's a mix of properties that have 5.6 feet, 9.8 feet, 4.7. Then there's others that 14.3, 13.3, 10.9, 15.4. So they run the gamut. And this would be sort of just right in the middle. I'm not seeing I do see where this could be denying them the same enjoyment of their property that others in the neighborhood are enjoying. And that literal enforcement of the property or of the code would deny them enjoyment of the property that others in their immediate area are enjoying. For that reason alone, I would feel comfortable granting this variance. I don't know how y'all feel.
I think that in considering a variance, we just consider what you're asking for. I agree. You've got a track filled out behind your fence, but it's not your track filled. There's the situation that's kind of odd with the fencing. Hopefully someday that will be resolved so it's a single shared fence so that both of you can enjoy a bit more property. I would agree. I think just looking at the lot itself, and for me, it's also not necessarily about the health situation because it's about a variance for building. Although I have great compassion for that situation. For me, it's about what are the other neighbors, exactly as you put it, what do the other neighbors get? What is the criteria for a variance? It seems to be a little bit uncodified. And at the end of the day, to err on the side of compassion and be good neighbors to each other, that's what I'm inclined to agree with.
Sounds like we were ready for a motion.
I'd be happy to make one. Since y'all are both looking at me.
I'm chairing. You did this to me.
Okay, I move that we approve item 3. Jason Andersen requests approval of a variance to the rear yard setback regulation of section 14.10.080 Provo City Code from 20 feet to 12 feet in order to add living space to his home in the R110 one-family residential zone located at 1330 North, 1160 West in the Grandview South neighborhood. And
We need a
what do we
finding.
do in the,
Could you just say, I think I understand the findings that others in the area enjoy the similar right, but if you could just state that in your findings.
okay,
Whatever your findings are, sorry. Didn't mean to put words in your mouth.
no, you're finding that their request of this variance would allow them to enjoy similar use of their property that others in their neighborhood are able to enjoy. Is that okay?
Do we have a second?
I
You second the
yes, I
motion?
second it.
Okay. Robert's rules, man, come on. Okay,
We
I'll
didn't
go.
all vote.
No, I think I was gonna go ahead and vote first.
Okay.
Yeah, switch it up this time. I will go ahead and vote aye, affirmative. I agree with the motion.
Okay, I vote aye.
I vote aye.
All right, and with that, we have approved the request. All right, well, as always, yeah, it's always, I appreciate anyone who's willing to engage this process. I know that it's long. I know that it's emotional. I know that it involves, real sacrifice and has real world, implications. So thank you. Congratulations. That's that it was actually congratulations on the anniversary, anyway. Anyway, and with that, we will adjourn our meeting.